Okay, I think we will get started now. It's just on 2 o'clock. So good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to... Hello. Welcome to the fourth session of our Australia-Vietnam webinar series on the digital transformation of TVET. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present and all First Nations people who may be here with us today. My name is Lyndall Manson and I am the Policy and Project Manager at TAFE Directors Australia. So today's webinar session will focus on utilising new technologies for TVET course delivery in trades. I would like to acknowledge the support of DESI and of the education team at the Australian Embassy in Vietnam, as well as the Directorate of Vocational Education and Training for this webinar series. I would also like to thank the participants from TVET and colleges from across Vietnam for being here with us again today and for being so engaged in this webinar series. We've had great discussions so far and we look forward to more constructive dialogue today. It's a great pleasure to have with us today two Australian experts with great experience in today's webinar topic. Firstly, we will hear from Brett McRory, who is a team leader in building and construction at TAFE New South Wales. And we have Melissa Chiadouli, who is the faculty program leader in simulation from Holmes Glen Institute in Victoria. Brett's presentation will focus on building and carpentry, while Melissa will be focusing on nursing. At the end of their presentations, we'll have a question and answer session. So please continue to post your questions in the chat box as you have done in previous sessions. And before we move on, just a quick reminder that you can access simultaneous interpretation to Vietnamese and English by clicking on the interpretation button at the bottom right of your screen. So both of our speakers will also need to choose the English interpretation channel. Kindly ensure that your microphone is on mute if you're not speaking. And please note that this webinar is being recorded and the recording will be circulated to participants after the webinar. So I'd now like to introduce our first speaker for today. Brett McRory is the team leader for building, bricklaying, design, high risk, joinery and painting for the South region of TAFE New South Wales. He is an innovative leader in connected delivery for trades at TAFE New South Wales. He is a former builder and carpenter who is passionate about teaching our future trade generations. So over to you, Brett.
Okay, sorry, just getting my mute. Thank you everyone for having me. My name is Brett McRory and welcome to my discussion on connected delivery for trades. I'm a team leader at Wollongong South Region, TAFE New South Wales, and have spent 20 years as a builder and carpenter, and then now 10 years experiencing teaching trades, 10 years working innovatively with Moodle, Adobe Connect, YouTube, and now our transition over to Microsoft Teams and all their apps. I'd like to explain our journey quickly before we get into the depths of discussing TVETs. We've been using this method of delivery for over 7 years. We originally designed this for our Certificate 4 in Building students, which is a pathway for carpentry students to become a licensed builder. Originally, our delivery was only face-to-face. Our students were required to come to class. There was no flexibility. Class attendance was compulsory. And after 2 years for our delivery just at Wollongong, our course had a total of 14 years completion. After consultation with my line manager at the time, we looked at being flexible, allowing students options to study when they could. We embraced connected delivery. So we started off using Moodle as our LMS and our Adobe Connect as our online classroom, and we promoted active learning. Our delivery team worked together promoting lectures, tutor support, and assessing in groups. And in 6 years of delivering this way, we have grown throughout the entire state, inclusive of Wollongong, Nowra, Maria, Goulburn, and throughout the entire regions of South, including Wagga, Griffith, Albury, Orange and Bathurst, and throughout the entire state, pretty much. Try and put this into context. The drive from Wollongong to Hay is just over 7 hours drive. From Gundagai to Wagga, it's 1 hour drive. So we all work together and teach throughout the whole of the state. Connected delivery eliminates that burden. Our connected delivery allows students to come to class face to face. So you can see our students here at Wollongong at different campuses. So you can see our students here at Sydney on the same lesson. It allows our students to holiday. So we have a student here, this is some time ago, still studying, but on holidays in London. Allowing our students to camp while studying. We also had a student who was representing Malta for under 21s football or soccer, and he continued with his connected delivery or his option so he could continue his studies. And funnily enough, even if it's like a 5-minute drive from the campus, some students prefer to stay at home. And you can see Nick here prefers to study from home because he can, his grandmother can make his meals while he's doing his studies. So COVID last year, COVID is like new challenges for us. So we'd been in lockdown. Our section also teaches carpentry, joinery and high risk, such as scaffolding and TVET. So our question was, how can we deliver with theory and practical activities? How can we embrace connected delivery and ensure our students stay engaged, not only to improve their skills for the future, but also assist with their mental health? And finally, how can we train the trainers for someone that has never used this method of delivery? So we embraced Microsoft Teams. We looked into many LMS systems, what works best for us. The suite of products is second to none, and we found that it was great on their phone. Many teachers have never delivered this method, so it's a big change, and we really like to keep it simple. We call it the KISS method, so keep it simple, stupid. So we don't attempt to reinvent the wheel, but just teach the same. So start face-to-face as if they're on the screen or webcam, and ensure we had IT support in the background. So fortunately for us, our section at Wollongong, really positive, and they just took it on board and just started working and teaching through Microsoft Teams, getting through the content and all working together. You can see there's an example here of a photo of the joinery students and TVET students talking and working through some of the calculations and maths content. You can see there's carpentry and TVET students looking at the Revit models and clash detection on site with the teachers on the left. And this example, I love this. Mick is our joinery teacher with the TVET students. He's a fantastic teacher, but he never had to transition to connected delivery. So he embraced, really, he just turned the webcam on in the background and just started teaching as he would normally. I would stay there in the background and help out if there's any IT support or any issues, just putting their mind at ease. Now, we promoted using this method. We need to keep the students engaged. Too much talking online doesn't work. So we needed to promote active learning and engage the students with video footage of what needs to be complete and all shown. So we promoted, I have my YouTube channel, the Wollongong Chippy, and students also, I have another colleague build some. So we use a lot of the videos to promote carpentry and all of the trades, so they understand how to complete an exercise. I have a really good example here of how to sharpen your chisel, and we use the POV goggles. So you have the camera in the center, and it actually goes through the process and makes them understand how to do it. So I'll just play this video for you. It's not very straight, so I'll get that straight first, run it across. So I go like this. That angle, very good. Do this one. Yeah, that's better. Riley, you can jump on. I really like that video. It really shows how a student can go in and actually practice it and do that themselves. A promotion of active learning enables the students to watch the videos and practice the activity themselves. They can pause or replay the video on their phone and complete any desired task. Another video, which I really like, is an example of showing a roofing practical activity that is used for the carpentry students. minor span and the major span. And then you can, sorry, I'll just take that back to the start. Right, day 2, broken hip and valley. Students have done their centering rafters. Then they've run in centering rafters and the crown end, minor span and the major span. And then you can see their ridge runs all the way and butts into that centering rafter. I'll just bring it around. You can see they've actually just cut their rafter in there, so that's found the position for their ridge to go in. So far so good. And now they're finishing off the hips. Getting the hips in, and now they're starting to do all their creepers. They'll continue with that. Creepers in the major and the minor span. And then we'll start working out on the broken hip. Right, continuing with the broken hip, you can see the students have marked off their centre lines. We have a nail at the top which is right in the centre apex. So for this broken hip, we've continued the string line down as if where it would be a hip roof. And then now, they're going to measure their points for their broken hip. They're going to use an edge bevel hip and their plumb bevel hip to cut that in. Right, the boys have now fitted off their broken hip. We've got the string line through, but they've actually measured from the centre line to the centre line, and it's the same measurement from that point to the outside of the plate. Now they're going to fit off from the centre line in there, position for their valley rafter, just before I fall over, down into there. They're just going to scribe this one in. Righto, the boys have finished off their broken hip corner, I should say, I suppose. They've just used the string line to see, and then they've measured off from the length of the minor roof. It's worked out within a couple of mils, so it's pretty accurate. Then you can see the crown end become a crown end valley due to the stretch of the span. So you can see they've worked out what the half span is, they've made a mark, and then they've positioned the valley crown end. You can see that's ready for valley boards. Maybe if they put in another couple more creepers, you can see that they've done a fairly good job. Good effort. I really like that video. I know it was done during class and it was pretty ad hoc, as if we're just getting the actual concept so the students understand, and they can watch that over and over again to get an understanding of how to pitch the roof. So now with our ongoing growth of using connected learning, we've really shifted over to using Microsoft Teams, and we can all use these apps that have been integrated. So the students can use them on their phone. We're promoting Polys, OneNote as a student workbook or teaching resources, any website and any forms that can be interactive quizzes on their phones that we find is really useful for the students. And that's really just touching the sides with the size of this Microsoft suite. I've been fortunate to follow Dr. David Kellerman from UNSW, and we're really impressed with some of the stuff that he does in Microsoft Teams. And I'll just reflect on one of the comments that he's mentioned, that, and today, if it doesn't work on mobile, it doesn't work. We found that to be really, really important, especially for our trade students that probably aren't that great at sitting in the classroom. Since we started now, and we're continually doing it, it's been well over a year since we've been dealing with COVID. Our carpentry TVET students are still using activities, they're still doing stuff on their phone, and we're promoting a lot of active learning. Students can upload their own videos of work completed, We've got an example here of a building student that's engaging in safety issues on site when using plant and equipment. So they can actually take the videos of what they're doing on site and upload that for evidence. So there's a few questions that may come about. What if they don't have a phone? So we need to promote connected learning centres, stream from a central location, forward learning content. So, you know, worst case paper-based possibly, and use mobile training units, which are being promoted in the South region of TAFE New South Wales. Here's an example of a connected learning centre, which is TAFE New South Wales Narrandera, which is inland. And the other is an example of a mobile training unit. We notice that we have these for not just carpentry, but also for cookery and those type of practical activities, which are really useful in the far to reach areas of New South Wales. To summarise, for us, the teachers have really had to embrace the technology. We've spoken about it and we said, look, be prepared to make mistakes. I've done it many times. Use what the students use, you know, really embrace using the phones. And if students don't have phones, you know, promote some of those regional learning hubs where they can use different connected spaces. Teach similar to face-to-face when they're first starting and grow with it. Select the technology that suits you and grow with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brett, for that presentation. We certainly got a really good sense from some of those videos about the vocabulary that's used in building and construction, but also the noise on site. It's obviously something that students have to get used to. And I think, you know, you were talking about a broken hip, which is funny in building and construction, because now we're going to have a presentation on nursing where a broken hip is an entirely different thing. So no, thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end once we've had our next presentation. So I would now like to introduce our second speaker for today, Melissa Chiaduli. So with 25 years of experience in paediatric intensive care nursing, Melissa is the current simulation program leader for the Faculty of Health Sciences, Youth and Community Studies at Holmes Glen Institute in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. Melissa holds graduate and postgraduate qualifications in nursing and education, and recently completed a Master of Adult and Vocational Education. In her role as simulation program leader, Melissa has led several simulation initiatives across the faculty, including the introduction of an intraprofessional simulation for Bachelor and Diploma of Nursing students. Melissa is a passionate advocate for simulation and in developing learners to become capable, knowledgeable, and compassionate individuals ready for success in the healthcare and human services field. So over to you, Melissa. And just let me know when you want me to put up your slides.
Sure, you can pop them up now, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that kind welcome as well, Lyndall, and welcome to everyone listening in Vietnam and around Australia. So today my presentation is going to be focusing on delivery of online blended TVET courses using new technologies for TVET course deliveries in trades. I think that, Lyndall, you stole my line there, because I was just about to say that even though Brett fixes homes and I fix bodies, I never knew that there was such a thing as a broken hip outside the health profession. So that was fantastic to hear that. So thank you very much, Brett, for your presentation. Next slide. So my name is Melissa Chiarulli, and my background is in paediatric intensive care nursing with particular interest in simulation with over 27 years of experience. The place that I work for is called Holmes-Glen, and it's in Victoria. It's a leading Australia provider of vocational and higher education, and we have very close connections to the community and industry, including with nursing, Holmes-Glen Private Hospital, which is an Australian TAFE first. We have over 530 courses throughout the Institute, and we're one of the largest government-owned TAFEs in the state of Victoria. Within 7 campuses across Victoria, we offer certificates, diplomas, degrees, apprenticeships, and pre-apprenticeships. And with over 35 years experience, we strongly believe in our values, our ambition, scholarship, passion, integrity, respect, and excellence. Next slide. Before I start my presentation, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of the land that I stand on. I would also like to pay respect to the elders, both past and present, of the Kulin Nation, and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians present today. Next slide. Okay, am I still with you? I just had a little blank out then.
All good, Melissa.
All
we can
good.
still hear you.
Fantastic.
Yes,
Great.
thank you.
Okay, the Diploma of Nursing course is a 4-stage 2-year course, and sorry. Okay, so today I'll share our insights into how the Holmes-Glen Diploma of Nursing Department delivers online blended VTech courses using technologies for TVET course delivery, particularly through the COVID-19 pandemic. I'll discuss online teaching that has occurred over the last 18 months, how we deliver our online teaching, and the requirements of our students prior to each lesson, during and after the lesson. And I also would like to introduce very excitedly our virtual reality program and how we've implemented that into the Diploma of Nursing course. Of course, with anything, there's always unexpected lessons and silver linings that will be discussed throughout this webinar, sharing tips we've learned, realigning thinking to fit with the new realities and creative ways of teaching and learning, which is one of the most fantastic ways I saw develop throughout the pandemic. Next slide. The Diploma of Nursing is a 4-stage educational program, and it's run over 2 years, 6 months to each stage. And we have 25 units that are delivered across that program that cover all the required elements to be eligible for a registration as an Australian enrolled nurse. We currently have 1,500 Diploma of Nursing students across our 2 campuses, which you can see in the slide, Moorabbin, the southeast of Melbourne and the city, with an additional 450 Bachelor of Nursing students at our Moorabbin campus. Next slide. We utilise simulation-based education widely in Holmes-Glen for exposure and immersion level interprofessional training in the institution, and it's a really integral component of Diploma and Bachelor of Nursing courses. Holmes-Glen simulation is carried out using multiple modalities, and the next few slides I'm going to be showcasing our Diploma of Nursing students working with our simulated resources. And I thank the Diploma of Nursing students for participating in this program. So the first photo you see is a past task trainer, and it's 2 nurses learning how to take blood from a patient, which is just an arm at this stage. Next slide. We do a lot of work with our mannequins. Here you see 3 nurses working and doing some CPR on a mannequin. One is a scribe, one doing the compressions, and one doing the breathing. Next slide. We have 3G simulated mannequins, and this is our little neonate who cries, moves, seizes, and does all sorts of things the students love working with our little baby. And here are some 2 students that have recently did a little simulation. Next slide. And these are our simulated participants. So our simulated participants are actors, but we don't like to say the word actor. We like to, they are diverse 50 casual staff members who work with the students in our immersive simulated scenarios. Our SPs portray a variety of different patients or clients. So this SP is portraying a patient. They can also portray family members, clients or other professionals in our clinical scenarios. And the SPs are really what provide a unique and authentic realistic opportunity for our students to incorporate their clinical skills and knowledge with communication and empathy and cross-cultural sensitivity working as a team. So environments such as a hospital ward are replicated in our simulated apartments, but we also have rehabilitation apartments, community wards, home environments, lots of other different apartments. Next slide. This shows a simulated participant working with two nurses in a communication dialogue. So they're not used as a tool, but engaged as a living resource. So they do have an acting background, but they differ in that they add another layer by playing a simulated role. They're highly trained, they're skilled individuals, and an important part of their job is to provide constructive communication and feedback from their perspective of a client or a patient. And the students really love hearing from a SP about what it felt like being their patient. How did they care for them? What did it feel like when they asked them a question? You know, would you like me to look after you again if I was in a hospital environment? Things like that. So they're really valuable opportunities for learners to practice skills in an environment that's safe and supportive. And they can really also learn about interprofessional skills and professionalism as well, without putting real patients or clients at risk in a safe environment. Next slide. So this is a photo of our Holmes Glen Simulation Centre. It's sort of like a bit of a theatre, I guess. So we have a little theaterette that has about 25 students that can sit there. There's a big one-way glass, as you can see, and then we have our ward or our clinical area that we can set up however we like. And at the back of that is a technician's office, and they can control all the computers, televisions, things that we need to simulate the scenario. Our simulation centre is widely acknowledged as a leading health training facility, and not only do we work with nursing, we work with allied health, paramedical, medical education courses and community services. Next slide. This is just another picture of the immersive simulation apartments looking in as a student. And simulation really assists in the preparation of learners for clinical placement and professional practice. And it's a really integral component of the Diploma of Nursing program. Similar to Brett, he was also doing simulation, so showing students in an environment how to do a task so that when they're in their clinical practice, they've got a good idea and about what they're doing in the next steps. So it offers opportunities for learners to act within their scope of practice, to comply with professional codes of practice and conduct, which are really important as you're a registered or enrolled nurse. We're looking at appropriate assessment and problem solving skills and maintaining clinical safety. So simulation suites are considered a workplace environment. So you can see their students are wearing their full uniform, including footwear, and they're taught how to be very professional in how they look and how they act and what they say. Our next photo. This is just a lovely photo of some of our students. I'm very happy to be doing some simulation in our immersive learning centre. So prior to the pandemic, nursing classes were face-to-face, 3 days a week. We have an interactive cloud management system called Brightspace, and I think you've heard about other interactive cloud management systems over the last few sessions, and they're used both by the teachers and the learners. And this is where core unit information and learning resources are uploaded, and learner grades and progress is also displayed. So it's a really integral part of our learning system. We can record lecture content up there, put additional resources there, quizzes and unit outlines. So attendance throughout the nursing course is closely monitored. Most of the assessments and clinical skills laboratory and simulation is 100% attendance, and 80% of timetabled lectures and tutorials, there's expected participation. Next slide. Okay, so this shows you a little diagram about the units of study and the different modalities that we use to create a really enriched learning experience. So the units are delivered for each stage of study to overlap and complement each other. For example, learners might be studying the renal system in anatomy and physiology. So they might listen to weekly podcasts. They might complete some case-based scenarios of patients that have got urinary difficulties in a tutorial, and clinical skills laboratory classes, they might learn how to pass a urinary catheter. The immersive simulation combines the acute and complex management of patients. There's also communication, and they also might have medication units in the scenario to further deepen the students' knowledge. E-learning, so e-learning represents a self-directed method of learning, and it's often completed off campus, and it might include quizzes and online learning packages. Podcasts are very popular now, and they're a fantastic active learning technique that engages the learners, and there are so many different podcasts out there for nursing. Case-based tutorials are so important and integral at this stage of learning to really encourage participation and development of teamwork skills. So they place more emphasis on the understanding as opposed to just that reproduction and memorization, and they're delivered within the holistic multidisciplinary care framework. Next slide. So I know a lot of the sessions prior to me have spoken about flipped learning and a flipped approach, and I just wanted to give you an overview of how the flipped approach is used within nursing. So this is a little triangle that explains at the bottom, it's really important that you remember and you understand, and then how can you apply, analyse and evaluate after that. So flipped classrooms are used in the Diploma of Nursing as a pedagogical approach that when we're in class, the class is engaging and creative and active and social. So it's not just teacher sits at the front and talks. The activities are completed beforehand to deepen the understanding of the class, and also completed afterwards to finish the unit. And we're moving away from a much lower level thinking and knowledge transmission to a very active, creative level of understanding. So learning can be individualized within the students, and the students are really collaborating with each other. The teacher is more a facilitator than someone that just that talks to the class. And we also use digital technology in a really meaningful way. Next slide. This is just a little example of how how classrooms might have looked before flipped learning, where you had the prepare, which usually involved the student watching Netflix. You had explore, so in the classroom, but we're really disengaged, not listening to the lecture, maybe flipping on some Facebook. There's not really a fantastic interaction with the patient, with the teacher. And then apply, usually the students like, help, what do? I don't know what I'm doing. So flipping the classroom around, next slide, we have a completely different view of how students are learning. So we have prepare, explore and apply. So prepare at the top with the student with the computer. She's preparing for her upcoming class. So she might have been given a podcast to read or a lecture to listen to, a journal article, or undertaking some sort of self-directed learning by the teacher. Explore is completely different from the classroom traditional layout, and we've got students working together with the teacher as a facilitator, and it's active face-to-face learning in tutorial space, and they're exploring the content through problem solving and critical thinking and group work. And for this to be really meaningful, the students must prepare, complete the prepare section before they come into a class. And apply, you can see here, this is a rolling out phase. So this is when the teacher becomes the guide or the mentor or the coach to the students during class time. So the teacher is free to interact and walk around with the students and often provide one-on-one instruction. Essentially, this model gives educators more time to support their students because all that time spent teaching and talking is now into active learning. As flipped learning has only recently been implemented at Holmes Glen, we've not yet formally evaluated the program. However, several studies have demonstrated that flipped learning and flipped classroom promotes higher student engagement and a more active approach to learning in the higher education. Next slide, thanks. So now I'm moving on to a number of fantastic Diploma of Nursing initiatives. So this is while navigating the pandemic and forced online teaching. So we had the 3 principles of prepare, explore and apply, and you saw them all being acted out in the classroom. But when the pandemic arrived and we were forced to be online, how did we convert this flipped approach to an online learning? So we used, I'm just going to give you 3 examples of many that we used. One of them was MedSafe. And so in Australia, medication errors are unfortunately the second most reported incident type after falls. And so this is a program that has been bought, and it's modelled on the actual risk profiles of Australian hospitals, and students are working through scenarios and workflows that are clinically relevant and realistic. So throughout the pandemic, MedSafe's been a really excellent online teaching tool, and it's looking at the responsibility and accountability of the student learner in following best practice and local protocols. So the flip back model was specifically designed by one of our nursing educators and is now used in stage 2, 3 and 4 of the diploma course. The concept of flip back began after our educator noticed a deficit in the students' recall of previous knowledge that was required as a stepping stone to the next unit. So I'm sure we've all been in that situation where we've taught our students something, and then when it comes to recall that concept for the next unit, students are like, I don't know, I can't remember what was said. So this flip back model was designed as a bit of a rewind or a reminder of the prior learning from the previous stage units, enabling students to draw on a previous content to actively construct new knowledge. Flip back was designed to integrate the theory horizontally within the semesters and vertically from one year to the next to continually grow and develop our learners. Flipback was integrated into the Brightspace platform. So if a student was perhaps learning about how to give an injection and they couldn't remember how to give the medication and the 12 stages, the rights of administration, they could flip back quite easily into the Brightspace platform and have a look at prior learning. So this integrated approach to teaching assessment really helped prepare learners for clinical placement and eventually professional practice. The last thing that was implemented successfully was something called On the Couch. Throughout the pandemic, one of the teachers implemented an optional, informal and quite relaxed drop-in session addressing any issues that the students were having with the prolonged online learning platform. So this was something that was student initiated. It was what the students wanted to bring to On the Couch. So there was no defined plans or goals. Usually the session went for 60 minutes. And after numerous sessions, On the Couch was recorded to enable students to return to the sessions for revision for practical assessments. An example of On the Couch might be, for example, an in-depth discussion regarding nursing documentation or troubleshooting issues related to a tutorial case study. Student feedback was overwhelmingly positive and all sessions have been really well attended. A fortuitous benefit of On the Couch was the strengthening of student-teacher relationships, starting with a relaxed social chat at the beginning of the session. And this was so important, particularly through periods of enforced social restrictions. And such supportive relationships with teachers have positively contributed to the mental well-being of our isolated students in a social and relaxed learning environment. Next slide. So this is a diagram I do not intend to go through today, but just as a resource for you, because it's a really lovely summary of the flipped classroom framework. and its alignment with Bloom's modified taxonomy. So we'll move on, but that is just there for your for you to use. Okay. So this completes the first part of the presentation today with the explanation of the mode of delivery of Holmes-Glenn's Diploma of Nursing, centering around the flipped approach of prepare, explore and apply. The next section shares insights into how we pivoted to deliver our course from a 3-day-a-week face-to-face to entirely online for a large period of time, and finally now a blended mode of delivery as we continue to educate throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. So being on the front line of nursing education as COVID-19 emerged, and as you've heard many times before in other sessions, face-to-face models of teaching came to a halt and at times was very overwhelming, I will not lie. However, as time progressed and as teachers and students swapped classrooms for virtual rooms and online education, the new normal emerged. There was challenges, I won't dispute that, but our focus has always been on the welfare of our students. So we all began to work together as one, which was such a strength. We identified obstacles, we minimalised risk, and we created opportunities for really innovative learning. Next slide. I just wanted to take a moment to discuss the pandemic in a Melbourne context. Throughout this webinar series, you've heard from educators from various areas through Australia and our experiences of the pandemic. As you know, Australia is a very large country. So what happened in some areas have been completely different to others. And unfortunately, Melbourne has had the longest lockdown in the world. Victoria has been under social restrictions since 16th of March in 2020, when a state of disaster was imposed. The nation swiftly implemented measures to mitigate the spread of the virus and build capacity within our health system. But unfortunately, Victoria, which is the state I live in, and particularly Melbourne, my town, has been the hardest hit state in Australia by far. We are still facing a lot of hardship, but not comparable to many other countries. However, the lives lost due to COVID-19 is still being quite difficult and will be devastating for some time yet. The pandemic definitely laid bare difficulties of remote learning and teaching throughout the world, and especially in healthcare education, where hands-on learning was such a crucial aspect of students' education. There was also this pressure to get our nurses graduated into the hospital system to help with the load of the COVID patients. So once COVID-19 hit, we rapidly prepared transmission prevention and control policies and procedures so that we could keep some skills on campus. However, we've experienced various degrees of institute closure throughout the last 18 months, through total closure to lectures and tutorials online and laboratory classes and simulation back on campus. International students have been unable to return back to Australia for their course in some cases, or else continued studying in Australia, but quite isolated from their families with various degrees of hardships. So in the next slide, what did we do? So we basically rapidly engaged. Within a week, we had to change the whole way that we taught into delivering other educational models and incorporating high fidelity simulations involving simulated participants and virtual reality into the remote learning platform. So rapid modification was essential. We had to determine what requirements of the curriculum were really essential versus non-essential content. We had to look at skills that could be taught virtually versus online. And then we had to comply to how we're going to practice skills while ensuring physical distancing if we were able to go on the campus. We also had to make sure that we prioritised allocations for our graduating students, as I said, to support healthcare in the workforce, and dealing with postponement and cancellations of some clinical placements, which is still having long-term implications. So Holmes-Glen is a relatively small institution compared to others. We're quite a close-knit community. Every teacher knows every student, and they're really important to us. So students, it was particularly that their emotional welfare was ensured. and maintained. And students really valued having live sessions in comparison to recorded lectures. And they loved breakout groups. I'm not quite sure if that's still the case 18 months on, but it was fantastic that even though we've been online, student groups have still managed to become quite close and supportive of each other. So many other speakers have touched on similar experiences of converting a whole course of face-to-face online technology within a week. We had lots of problems that you would have heard before, how to ensure that some of the more disadvantaged students have access to technology, the Australian bandwidth strain, and the tech support for both educators and students, teacher workloads, which have been incredibly demanding at times, and combined with engaging students to get out of bed, out of pajamas, put their cameras on, and the familiar talk of you're on mute, I dropped out, the postman came, the dog, child, husband has visited the camera. It's certainly been a steep and unprecedented learning curve. However, as others before me have articulated with challenges, it certainly brings growth, and with unplanned disruption and chaos, it's an opportunity in disguise sometimes. So next slide, thanks, Lyndall. So while COVID ravaged the world, we wondered what impact this would have on Australia. And some of our questions centred around how do we teach students online through simulation? So there are 4 main things that I want to discuss today that I hope you find interesting. At the forefront of everyone's mind was, how do you teach clinical skills to students virtually when they have limited experience and healthcare context to relate to and limited prior knowledge, especially those students that had just started their nursing careers and their nursing courses. So 4 main pathways of education were piloted, a calculated risks were taken, and a whole new way of education for Holmes Glen emerged. The first thing I want to talk about were our lab kits that were posted to students at home for online clinical skills. Once allowed, we had intense skill labs in small student bubbles. We had fit for purpose simulation modes of delivery, and we launched our virtual reality program onto the online platform. So next slide, please, Lyndall. So this is a photo of some of the postal kits that were sent out. So we did work out that some nursing skills could be taught safely remotely using live video demonstrations by teachers and students performing return demonstrations. So 2 such skills were teaching medication administration, and this one here is teaching a simple wound dressing. So our fantastic lab manager, along with the teachers, worked out a bit of a shopping list and also a list of products that would be sent home to the students. So you can see here there's a dressing pack, some sterile gloves, some saline, and some tape. And the students were sent a shopping list. They were affordable items, easily purchased within shops, and they consisted of some Pino Clean, hygiene scrubs, a paper bag, some paper, some sanitizer, and one student, this is a student's photo, when they were doing their wound care, this student found a football which like what you could imagine if as a wound, the center of it, the white line with the little marks across it, and this was their wound that they used. So students and teachers really were thinking outside the box here. Next slide, please. I apologise for these glitches, but we will keep going. Okay, I think you just need to go. Yep, okay, yep, perfect. So once the students had completed their lab kit, we use these storyboards here and a company called Elsevier, their clinical skills videos. So with the storyboards here, the students would work step by step with the educator through a clinical skill. They could also video their procedure and review with a skills checklist post the session. So our remote simulations ensured that students had the opportunity to demonstrate their skill as well as the critical thinking. And I really appreciated this system as well. where there were smaller groups and they could feel further supported. Next slide. So we also used intense skill labs in student bubbles at the campus. So once we had an exemption from the government restrictions, this meant that nursing was able to resume on campus for laboratory sessions only in a lot smaller groups, subject to development of a COVID safe plan, screening students upon entry to the building and ensuring physical distancing as much as possible, increasing PPE where required. Next slide. So something that we initiated was a refresher lab, and you can see because we had so many COVID delays with our placement, students were quite anxious about going to clinical placement. So this innovative approach was designed to pretty much simulate a working day at the ward. So students had to care for 3 patients and they were simulated participants that were acting within a scenario, and they had to manage the changing conditions and needs in the acute setting. So they came to the shift and they received a handover from the nurse in charge, and this was all done in our nursing lab. And once they received a handover, they had to work out how they were going to manage these 3 patients within a period of 5 hours they were there for. They received a tea break where they would have to hand over to their facilitator using an isobar approach, and then they'd receive a handover after their break and they returned on the ward. Sometimes the patients would deteriorate, and the students need to identify these patient deteriorations and be able to notify the RN and respond to the patient just as they would if they were in the workplace. So these refreshers were really important for us to use as an assessment factor. So was the student ready to attend placement? So if it was identified that students were not ready for clinical placement, we would activate a remediation support to ensure that our students are really well prepared and they're going to go into placement and be able to do placement to a satisfactory level. So students that demonstrated unsafe practice were deemed not yet ready to attend placement, and they received more remediation. Next slide. So this slide is showing Susma, one of our nursing students, and Sheila, who was one of our simulated participants, and we thank them for giving permission for this image. So while the peak of COVID-19 was occurring, learning was 100% remote. And so our simulated participants, who usually worked with the students in the simulation centre, became one of our greatest assets as we trialled moving them into the WebEx spaces. This was quite difficult at times because, like the teachers, some of the SPs who were in their 70s and 60s didn't really have that IT awareness. So working closely with our IT team and simulation technicians, SPs were quickly taught how to navigate a WebEx space, and our high fidelity simulation through the lens of a computer was born. So students had to interact with the patients, and sometimes we had up to 6 SPs in different WebEx rooms, and students had to admit the SPs into a hospital or discharge them or educate them. They were expected to present as if on placement in correct nursing uniform in their own homes and professionally interact with their patients at all times. Although sometimes this was really overwhelming for the students, they quickly became confident and it became a real telehealth environment, and they had to learn how to communicate to someone when they're not face to face. We also trialled our first intraprofessional simulation where we invited our allied health students into the WebEx space, working together with nursing students for a simulation, which was fantastic. Next slide. The last section of my presentation today will involve a demonstration of our newly developed Our last section of my presentation will talk about a demonstration of our newly developed virtual reality program that we launched onto the learning platform as a result of COVID-19. So our virtual reality program was because of a government grant that we received in 2019 of 1.4 million to build a virtual reality simulation program offering true to life situational training. So often VR, they are using avatars, but we worked with real simulated participants, and the students were going to be fully immersed in a 360-degree pre-recorded simulated working environment where actors undertook the role of patients and carer families in crisis situations. So VR is a fantastic modality, and it's a really innovative and emerging technology. Students can experience a fully immersive situation, and they can work anytime, anywhere, any place, and 100% of students can actively participate in this. Scenarios that we completed were dealing with an aggressive person, a person with delirium, a deteriorating patient, and a patient receiving palliative care. So next slide. You can see a photo here of all the staff that were involved in the virtual reality program. So next slide. Okay, so the next slide that you see depicts the planning process for the immersive scenarios and reflects what you see as you work through the scenario. So I like to simplistically compare it to a choose your own adventure type of activity where a situation arises, and based upon your theoretical and practical knowledge of the scenario, in this case, a deteriorating patient, there's a decision that needs to be as to the next step you'll take. So branching scenarios give you options of what to do, and based upon your choice, you'll then play out the consequence. So perhaps in the case of de-escalating an angry client, your decision to call security guards to a public area to calm down is not the correct decision. And going back to options, asking the client if they would like to discuss their problem in a private room is the preferred option. So mastery videos were also recorded to enable students to view the skill in a best practice format, and then the student can review that whenever they want, especially before an assessment. Another important element in our VR scenarios was the involvement of actual clinical health professions working along with the simulated participants. For example, the emergency physician and the 3 emergency department nurses who enter the room after a MET call, which you'll see later, were from a actual hospital nearby. Whilst this particular scene was loosely scripted for time management purposes, the MET core team were acting as they would within any hospital emergency they would be called to. The next slide is a small snapshot of the 4 VR scenarios we have developed. Thanks, Lyndall.
I'm just waiting for the video to load. It won't be a moment.
No, I need to have this appointment. Look, can't you just call Steve? He'll explain everything to you.
Steve has back-to-back appointments all day today, and you're not on his list. What? You'll need to make a new appointment.
No, I need to have this appointment. No, the girl I spoke to on the phone, she confirmed this appointment for me. Just check your computer again, would you? It's there. It has to be.
I've already checked the computer. And you're not on the calendar.
Oh, God, I can't believe this. How can I not be there?
If you're not on the calendar, you don't have
an appointment. But I do have an appointment.
Hi there. Sorry.
What? You?
My name's Brian.
Yes.
And I'm the clinic manager.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, what's wrong? Did you call out?
My Bill here keeps vomiting blood. What are you going to do to help him?
Okay, excuse me. Bill, can you tell me how you're feeling?
I feel really awful.
Oh, darling, look at him. He looks just terrible.
Okay, I think we need to do another set of observations. Can you
Sure. Lorna, my name's Vicky. I'm one of the doctors. This is Jasmine and Carol. They're the nurses. You're at the hospital, you've had a fall and you've broken your wrist. Okay, we're here to look after you. I know. We'll get you something for that soon. Can you tell me what is your full name?
What do you want to know that for?
Just standard question.
It's Lorna.
Okay.
all you need to know.
Yeah. And where are we at the moment?
Told you before, we're in my bedroom and I don't like strangers in my bedroom.
Oh, sorry, Lorna. You're at the hospital. You've had a fall, all right?
I don't know how you let all this happen. I mean, look how much weight he's lost. He looks terrible.
Michael.
I mean, and why aren't you letting him have anything to eat? I mean, how's he going to get better if you won't even feed him?
He isn't going to get better, Michael.
Next slide.
No, I need to have this appointment. Look, can't you just come?
Thanks, Lyndall. So when COVID hit and we were initially forced into a 100% online environment, we began the process of rolling out this virtual reality program onto our learning platform, embedding the 4 scenarios into the appropriate educational units. So the brilliance with VR, as I discussed, is that it can be used anywhere, anytime, any place. So also one of the benefits that we were able to do is that we were able to have the students using the virtual reality program on the headset, on their mobile phone, or on their computer. And you can see there the 3 different views that the student has when looking at the virtual reality program. We also had to educate our educators using WebEx how it occurred. And we also had to write some educator guides. We did some dry runs with the staff as well to make sure that everyone was knowing how to do a traditional immersive simulation over the internet and over WebEx. So headsets are part of the initial nursing kit the students buy at the commencement of their course. However, if students did not have a set, a pickup time was arranged on campus. Some students actually didn't like the headsets and preferred to go with the mobile phone or their computer. So students would be introduced to the scenario that they were doing. And for this purpose, we're doing a deteriorating patient. And an initial debrief was held online with all the students, describing the scenario, setting them up with the equipment and the VR programs. So students were then given a time frame of 1 to 2 weeks to interact with the VR scenario at home, any place, anytime or anyhow, before coming together online for a comprehensive debrief, facilitated by an experienced simulation educator, followed by evaluations and a period of reflection. So students and teachers were able to access the IT department and a simulation technician to troubleshoot issues that may have arisen. Throughout the following suite of PowerPoint slides, I will show snippets of the deteriorating patient, 360-degree video, followed by some examples of critical decision points students would need to make before moving to the next frame of the scenario. You will see the video in the 2-dimension view. If looking through the headset, the student would also experience the same view in a 3-dimensional virtual reality layout. Whether the student was viewing via the headset or the mobile phone or the computer, they could interact beautifully with the scenario. So with the headset, they could use the gaze feature and they could look all around the headset in the 360-degree view. The students could move the mobile phone and that would give them a 360-degree, or they could use the mouse or the trackpad on the computer. And by using that, they could check around the corner, around the back or front of the room, wherever they wish to go with the 360-degree. So the next slide I'm going to show you is a 30-second snippet of the handover. So this was the beginning of the scenario. And what you see is the night nurse handing over to you, looking at you as you were the day nurse coming on for the shift.
Oh, of course. He's on atorvastatin, sotalol, apixaban, and meloxicam when needed for his back. Okay, have a good shift.
And the next slide.
Oh, of course.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So what you would see initially, I've put these together just for today's presentation, but what would initially pop up was the very first little frame that says the deteriorating patient, welcome. In this model, you will learn to recognise and respond to a deteriorating patient. So with the trackpad or using the gaze feature on the headset, and you could press let's begin. And then the handover nurse would do a handover, and then this would pop up before you could go to the next scenario. What other information would you like to know about William? What does William do for work? Or what medications is William on regularly? If you chose what does William do for work, it will pop up and say, that's good information to know, but not relevant to the scenario. If you clicked on medication is William, what medication is William on? She would say what she just said about the medications. Then the next step is, what would you like to do? Would you like to walk into the room and perform safety checks, perform hand hygiene and walk into the room, or hand hygiene and assess room for hazards? And the next slide.
I'm sorry, excuse me, would you mind washing your hands first, please? Go look in the stomach.
And the slide after that. Yep, so you can see here that there's lots of hazards. So the student could look right around the room and try and find what the hazards are. There's a cord here, there's something on the ground here, there's something loose here, and the student would have to identify all the hazards. So although infection control is a very important part of patient care, assessing for hazards is very important to keep you and your patients safe. Let's have a look at the hazards in the room. What are the potential hazards? And you had to check A, B, C, D, or E. And if you've done the right hazards, the room is safe and it's time to move on. The next frame that we're going to look at is when the emergency buzzer was pressed. So a little bit of length of time has gone in, but for purposes today and time purposes, we've moved on a little bit for the scenario.
Hi, what's going on? Did somebody press the emergency buzzer? I'm just going to find out. Okay. Hi, Bill.
What's going on? Is Bill okay?
Bill, can you tell me if something's changed?
Stomach's hurting.
Okay. Can you tell me what the last set of observations were?
Oh.
So as an example for this particular scenario, are you concerned about Bill? No or yes. If you needed to have another look, you could re-review the findings. So what do you do now? Do you document in the patient notes? Do you document, stay at the bedside and call for help, or do you document and leave? Especially if you chose document and leave, there would be it is advised not to leave a patient that is deteriorating. So documentation is important. We should never leave our patient. The case study continues with a MET call, which is our emergency buttons pressed. And I just wanted to now go to the dialogue of that. Yep. So with the MET call, you could then tick what you're concerned about. And there's a few different ranges there. You could see that what did nausea and abdominal pain mean, that the abdomen was distended and painful. And then how would you provide an ISPA or handover? Let's watch Brian. And Brian, who is a nurse in the maroon scrubs, would then tell you how he would do the handover. The next video, well, just a screenshot actually, it shows that what happens now, which is a mastery video. So if you go to the next slide, Lyndall, you can see that.
Hi, I'm Raja, I'm the ICU Reg.
Did you want to introduce this one?
Yep, you can do it.
I believe you called the MET call on this patient. Do you mind giving me a quick handover on the patient?
Okay. And then if you go to the next slide, you can see a lot happening. So you can see that there is a nurse that is talking to the family that haven't been removed from the room, but are on the side of the room. You can see the team, the MET team that have walked in. All of these MET team an actual MET team through a local hospital, and they participated in the scenario for us. You've got the trolley, you have the patient not looking too well, and the student can watch the whole of the mastery video. They're not expected to know what happens in a MET call, but for them to learn what happens in a MET call, so if they're involved in one when they're on placement, they will know that they've seen it before, and it's a little bit more reassuring for them. So that basically explains the virtual reality, and that's the component there. I just wanted to go through some unexpected lessons in my next slide. So I hope I presented a really helpful session for you, sharing some of the tips that we ended up rolling out and how that creative thinking can really be of benefit. There's probably 3 takeaway messages I feel are quite pertinent today as we learn to live with COVID-19. Change is really difficult, especially in the context of COVID, at the start being very ill prepared, and everything as we knew it was being redesigned or redeveloped. But with by getting together with key stakeholders, being flexible and adaptable and willing to change, and with a little bit of kindness, change is definitely possible. Faculty and teacher support was really everything. We could not have come so far in our journey at Holmes-Glen without sharing our knowledge and our support. I wish to especially acknowledge Carmody Pillay, Fiona Cowie and Kim Kenwell, who work within the Diploma of Nursing, who've been instrumental in its presentation and willing to think outside the box to produce innovative educational experiences for our students. My final takeaway message contains a recipe for resilience using 5 key ingredients. And I was thinking about this, and I really think it's sort of a lovely way to really talk about COVID in general and teaching in a COVID environment. So by taking a large cup of empathy, a huge dose of creativity, equal amounts of collaboration and connection, and the secret ingredient is student engagement. And I think if you mix all these ingredients really carefully, you'll see resilience forming. And the final outcome is a resilient student in the face of uncertainty and adversity. So when we look at these 5 drivers, our 5 ingredients, empathy, creativity, collaboration, connection, and engagement, what we begin to see is a real recipe for growth. So we realise that no 2 dishes are the same. So people add their ingredients in a different order or change the amount of each component. And we recommend that you use this presentation as a guide to follow, but doesn't have to be followed precisely. We also recognise these 5 ingredients may not be the only ingredients in a successful development of curriculum, and that we all continue to develop this concept based on what we learn. Just with the next slide. So as I finish up, I love this picture. Unfortunately, this was shown, most of the photos were pre-COVID, but they're just very happy finishing their course. But the holistic human impact cannot be underestimated of COVID-19. But however, new connections such as today's collaboration is really one of the silver linings to network and collaborate across organisations worldwide. And one of the benefits of this internet connection is that we can connect worldwide. One common denominator that can't be denied is that we are all in this together. And I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank James Stafford and TAFE Directors of Australia and Eva and Lyndall for inviting me to speak today. It's been a privilege and an honour. To all of you listening in Vietnam, I hope you found this session rewarding and informative. I look forward to further collaboration with you in the future. I especially look forward to visit your beautiful country very soon when we can. I wish you well for the rest of the day and the coming weeks and months. And please stay safe and take care. And I think at the very last slide is one of our beautiful koalas. And this will lead us into questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I think I'll just leave the koala up just for a little minute because he's so cute. That was a really interesting presentation, and the videos, you know, you can see through those simulations how it gives you a real sense of what it's actually like to be on the ward. It's certainly something that you can't get just, you know, from a book or you know, from a classroom scenario. So thanks for sharing those. I think they were really interesting for today's topic. So we've had both of our speaker presentations now. What I would like to do is just to check with Leha to see if there have been any questions in the chat box. And we'll check that first. And if not, I think we've got a few questions. I've certainly got a few questions that I'd like to ask our speakers today, but let's just go to you first, Leha.
Mình có một câu hỏi vừa mới đến xong và tôi xin được đọc câu hỏi này dành cho hai diễn giả. Thứ nhất là câu hỏi chương trình giáo dục nghề nghiệp ngoài phần học trực tuyến thông qua video clip, YouTube thực hành thí nghiệm ảo vẫn phải có thời gian học trực tiếp để thực hành trong điều kiện nguyên vật liệu, môi trường tương tác như vị trí việc làm sau tốt nghiệp. Vậy trong điều kiện dịch bệnh kéo dài không thể thực hiện được dạy trực tiếp, trong khi khóa học tập trung thì có một thời gian nhất định, có một thời hạn nhất định, tập trung có một cái độ dài thời hạn nhất định, thì theo các diễn giả nên xây dựng chương trình đào tạo của khóa học như thế nào, giải quyết như thế nào để cho cái thời gian của khóa học này mình vẫn đảm bảo cái thời gian khóa học mà vẫn giải quyết được vấn đề vừa học trực tuyến mà vẫn có những cái thực hành bắt buộc trực tiếp ạ.
So I think you were asking that the COVID pandemic has been on for a very long time, and how to maintain the online learning for the intensity and the duration of the COVID pandemic. Is that correct?
And Melissa, I'd also add, just from a Vietnam perspective, and similar to Melbourne, actually, Vietnam has been on and off regulations and restrictions. So there's been sort of face-to-face, then online, face-to-face and online. And I think the question is also going to, how do you balance all of that?
With a lot of difficulty.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting that Vietnam has been similar to us. For example, we have finally moved to an online for our simulations, face-to-face for our simulations. We were just about ready to present a big simulation. We'd hired all our SPs, all the staff were there, additional staff, all our students. And the night before, we had found out that that there was potential COVID contact, so we had to cancel everything and move online. And so I'd say you have to be very forgiving. You have to be very quick to pivot. I hate that word, but and to be realistic that this is how it's going to be then for the next little while, moving in and out of restrictions and government restrictions as well. We're hoping as we move towards, I think today we actually reached 70% double dosed in Melbourne, so single dosed in Melbourne, which was very, very exciting for us. And we're hoping as we move towards more people being vaccinated, we can move towards a more normal sort of aspect. But it's very, very difficult, especially for the students that are constantly changing whether we're online or face-to-face. We just work out exactly, we try and do as much as we can online and leave the really important stuff that you cannot teach via a computer to a face-to-face sort of situation, which seems to be working for us, if that's answered your question.
Thanks, Melissa. Did you have any comments on that one as well, Brett?
Yeah, for us, we've pretty much just stuck to theory. The theory components has been online for most of the last 2 years, really. We've been in and out in Wollongong of lockdown. So we've been, once we get opened up, we just all of a sudden just do all practical. Like we don't do hardly any theory. So that's how we've been managing it. But we are starting to do on-site or workplace evidence, where the employer is getting more involved and completing, for example, fitting a broken hip on site and taking video footage of that. So we're just starting to get to that stage.
I was just going to add another complexity, I guess, that we're facing is that as there's such a backlog of student placement, if a placement suddenly becomes available, the student is pulled out of their learning to go to their placement. So now we have students with all varying degrees of learning at the course and trying to get the teacher then needs to work out who has been taught what and who needs to be caught up, and to hold catch-up lessons online and catch-up lessons face-to-face. So that with our placement shortage due to COVID has really added another layer of complexity to teaching. It's incredibly difficult, and I really take my hat off to anyone in Vietnam or Australia who are going through teaching with their students. But I think we can all agree with that. Along with that, there's been a huge amount of satisfaction as we get through this and know that our students are learning still.
Thanks, Melissa. And I guess for both of you as well, you know, the question is, when COVID is over and when restrictions are lifted, you know, how much of this online learning do you think will be maintained in these qualifications? You know, are these qualifications changed forever because of COVID? I'd be interested in your views on that as well.
For me, or for our trade, that the Cert 4 is pretty much, we're just about doing it all the time now. And it's because really we have a group of teachers working together rather than relying on the one teacher. So that seems to work for us. It'll probably be a slower progression for the trades, but it's going to be a big part of it. And I think it should be, because it can be done. You know, the flexibility for a student that doesn't have to drive 3 or 4 hours to get to a campus is necessary.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely been bonuses of having to shake up a education system that was pretty much set in stone. There's definitely been some fantastic things that we've done online that will remain online. For example, the bringing of our simulated participants onto WebEx space and doing telehealth has been invaluable, because students have to learn to really concentrate on verbal communication, oral communication, rather, because it's a lot more difficult online than it is when you're seeing someone face to face. Our things like on the couch have been fantastic, and it's a really nice way students are having problems to log in and have a really casual chat to the teacher, which you didn't get that opportunity when you were face to face, and teachers and students had to go from one class to another. There's certainly been some really good initiatives that have come out of COVID-19 that we'll definitely keep and do more of a blended learning.
Thank you, Melissa and Brett. So Leha, can we go back to you to see if there are any more questions in the chat box, or whether we have any participants who'd like to raise their virtual hand and ask a question of one of our speakers today, or both of our speakers?
Hiện giờ thì chúng ta không còn câu hỏi nào trong chat box. Và có thể là chúng ta xin mời các thầy cô, mình có câu hỏi thì mình có thể đặt trực tiếp bằng cách là nhấn vào nút giơ tay ạ. Sau đấy ban tổ chức sẽ mời các thầy cô đặt câu hỏi ạ. Mình có thể unmute để mình bắt đầu đặt câu hỏi và giao lưu với hai diễn giả. Xin mời các thầy cô ạ. Buổi hôm nay chúng ta có câu hỏi hoặc là chia sẻ gì về những cái thực tế ở Việt Nam mình cái việc mà học trực tuyến đã diễn ra như thế nào? Có cô Jen ạ. Xin mời cô Jen ạ.
I'll start the question asking live, if that's okay.
Thanks,
my question is, industry is going to be the ultimate judge of the success of online delivery, and that's true no matter what country you're in. It's true in Vietnam as it is in Australia. I was just wondering if you had any early views on how industry has accepted the training that's been delivered in this way, and if you had any tips for us in Vietnam about what you learnt during that journey.
For us, it's been quite difficult, because our industry are the front and center of the pandemic. So we have found at times that industry have been completely overwhelmed with, especially now, with more than 1,000 people in hospitals and 150 or so in intensive care. And so that has placed immense stress on our industry. And immense anxiety, I guess, for our students entering into that industry. So our students currently being double vaxxed, getting mask fit. But one thing I can say is that because placement has been missed on numerous opportunities, for our institution to start the remedial classes and the catch-up classes have been really, really fantastic. To be able to pretty much take a day in a hospital and simulate that day in the lab, including, you know, 5-hour shift and breaks and patients that, instead of having one patient, you've got your 3 or 4 patients there, has just been fantastic for teachers and students alike. So students have been incredibly anxious about going to the hospitals because they fear that they may have lost some of their learning and knowledge, like how do I do this injection? I haven't done an injection for 5 months. So they'll go back to remedial classes and relearn how to do that before their placement. Likewise, we have had industry reports of our students going to hospital that there are gaps there in their knowledge, but I think the hospital's been incredibly forgiving and have been fantastic at taking on that nursing preceptorship because of the situation. Everyone's very understanding and empathetic about the situation. So we've been had fantastic industry support, but we've also been supporting industry. So it's a sort of a two-way relationship.
Thanks, Melissa. Have you got any views on that one, Brett, from the building and construction side of things?
Actually, I do, thanks. For the employers, I think simply they probably preferred it to a degree because the students do not have to be there for the 4-day block. They need to complete a specific task. And because a lot of the theory's been done online, they may have got that or completed that task quicker. So they're on site working with the employer more, which is in the employer's favour. Also, it's sort of noticeable that the teachers or the trainers, whoever you'll call them, are now 24/7 rather than 9 to 5. So it's a bit more flexible for the students, which I think, you know, the employers need them at 7 till 4 o'clock each day. So they don't lose them as much. And then they sometimes can do some of the work in their own time, which I think, you know, might not be as good for the student or the apprentice, but it's good for the employer.
Thanks, Brett and Melissa. I can't see any hands raised. I do have another question for the speakers. I might use my chair's prerogative and ask you both. Just in terms of how the feedback cycle, the feedback circle works in your institutions. So would be interested to hear how you use feedback from your students and trainers on the online delivery. And how do you use that feedback to improve the design of your courses?
Brett, did you want to go first or?
Yeah, actually, that's a big deal for us. We do that, like with our connected delivery for building, we do that every year or every unit or every cluster. We're getting feedback from students to try and improve how we deliver. And it's pretty noticeable even for us. You know, we were using Moodle and Adobe Connect and probably have 2 different systems. Now the feedback was from the students that using that one system such as Teams is a lot better for them, and for them to actually use their phone, that's a massive plus for us. Students, you know, we've got carpentry, bricklaying students that don't really like sitting at a desk, being in a classroom. They just want to hurry up, get their theory content completed, and then they want to go out and start laying bricks and, you know, mixing mud.
From a homeschooling perspective, we started a student body. Often we found that students probably spoke a lot amongst themselves about what they wanted to improve, but that message wasn't going across to us. So having a student body that met with the managers of the courses was certainly a great way to understand what was happening amongst the students, where their concerns were, how the students were actually going. A lot of our students, as I spoke, were international students or other students of diverse backgrounds that were really suffering in the COVID pandemic. So there's a lot of open dialogue back and forth about how we can best look after a student emotionally, financially, physically, and also according to how they were studying. We have like Brett, a evaluation that we do for most of our simulation activities. I think it's called Ziplet. And so students get to feedback as per how a particular simulation went or a particular learning activity. And it was definitely a two-way system and something that we built on all the time and have modified all the time. How our courses look now compared to 18 months ago is vastly different. And we definitely learn very quickly, and we hear from students very quickly about what worked well and what didn't. I think time is so precious, and so for a student to go, you know what, that didn't work so well, it was great for us to then be able to get together again, having lots of meetings on weekly occurrences to discuss how the students are going. And there's also other larger sort of surveys from the higher management perspective about how our students have been going. So definitely communication is the key, and asking students to feedback however they'd like to feedback about improvements that could be made. I think no one's under any assertions that this is something that we didn't prepare for, this pandemic, and so we just need to learn together and cooperate and communicate together.
Thanks, Melissa. Yes, I definitely think that's a theme that's been coming through over the last few weeks. You know, asking, you know, people are sometimes afraid to ask for feedback in case it's bad, but it's actually, you know, a learning opportunity and a way to improve design and delivery of online courses going forward. You know, you've got to try something, see if it works, and then, you know, embed it or not. So yeah, definitely an important theme that's been coming out, I think, over the last few weeks.
I think feedback sometimes has negative connotations, and I always look at it feedback as feeding forward. So without feedback, you can't feed forward and improve things. So yeah, definitely changing that concept of we're not going to eat you up if you tell us something bad. This is a way that we can grow and learn from. So it'd be interesting to know if the Vietnamese culture is the same, in that they feel, their students feel they can feedback and grow as well, and learn from their program. So
yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah. So I'm not sure, Leha, whether we have any participants that would like to either ask a question or make a comment, or even just share some of their experiences with their online TVET. We do have lots of participants on the line today, so it would be a great opportunity if we had some Vietnamese participants who would like to speak. Or is everyone just...
Có một câu hỏi trong chat box và tôi xin được đọc câu hỏi này dành cho bà Melissa.
Okay, great.
Câu hỏi đầu tiên, đại biểu Phan Đăng Trường đến từ trường Cao đẳng Du lịch và Thương mại Nghệ An có 2 câu hỏi. Câu hỏi thứ nhất thì trước khi đọc thì tôi cũng có nhận thấy là nó cũng hơi chạy theo cái chủ đề của cái hội thảo của tuần trước là về vật thiết kế các cái chương trình thực tế ảo. Tuy nhiên thì tôi cũng vẫn xin đọc ở đây ạ. Xin bà chia sẻ thêm về phần mềm và cách thiết kế các chương trình thực tế ảo. Và câu hỏi thứ hai ạ, là theo tôi được biết, để tham gia học thực tế ảo thì người học cần có kính để tham gia. Tuy nhiên trong bài giảng của bà thì tôi thấy là bà có chia sẻ sinh viên có thể dùng điện thoại di động để tham gia học. Xin hỏi là sinh viên cần cài đặt hay sử dụng phần mềm gì ở điện thoại để có thể tham gia vào lớp học thực tế ảo mà không cần dùng kính chuyên dụng? Xin hết ạ.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. The virtual reality goggles, just to explain a little bit more, a fairly, there's a huge range, price range. Ours were only made out of cardboard, and they were probably about Australian dollars, about $12, $13 a set. But the beauty of this program that we use is exactly what you mentioned, that we can use the mobile phone or the computer. So this particular virtual reality program was called Scenario VR, CENARIO VR, and we bought the package, and we had one of our simulation technicians who is very into IT build the program for us. I'd be more than happy if someone wanted to have any more information to give you my contact details, and we can certainly talk about it. The students absolutely love the virtual reality, even if it was on the computer or the phone where it wasn't really technically VR, it was more 360-degree scenario. Having those, it's C rather than S. So just get rid of the S at the start. Perfect. Yep. Having branching scenarios and getting the students to choose their own adventure is just such an interactive way to learn. It was fantastic. And with this particular program, you can make all different types of things. It's fantastic. You don't have to have those expensive resources that people know exist with the world of virtual reality. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to talk about it further.
Thanks, Melissa. Leha, any more questions coming through, or anyone who'd like to share their own experience?
Có thêm 2 câu hỏi. Tôi xin đọc câu hỏi của anh Bạch Tuấn Anh, trường Cao đẳng Y tế Yên Bái trước ạ. Vì một cái câu hỏi khác thì lại hơi nghiêng về phần gọi là thiết kế chương trình, chính là chủ đề của tuần trước, cho nên là tôi sẽ đọc câu hỏi của anh Bạch Tuấn Anh trước. Cơ sở đào tạo có được các trang thiết bị đào tạo hiện đại, phòng học thực tế ảo và các thiết bị trợ giúp camera 360 độ, giảng viên và sinh viên thông thạo về công nghệ thì là một điều rất là tốt và thuận lợi cho việc đào tạo trực tuyến. Xin diễn giả Melissa cho các lời khuyên đối với các cơ sở đào tạo ở Việt Nam. Hiện chưa có các trang thiết bị hiện đại đó, chỉ có các trang thiết bị rất là tối thiểu như máy tính, máy quay video thông thường, điện thoại. Thì nên áp dụng trong việc áp dụng đào tạo trực tuyến. Điều dưỡng viên thì chúng tôi nên làm như thế nào?
Okay, that's a big question, but like I said, I'd be more than happy to continue in another conversation. There are lots of great things you can just do that are quite simplistic. Even if you video some, we have had a video of some teachers, and we have had some educators doing a skill like changing a dressing and doing it completely incorrectly to start off with, maybe touching the wound or not cleaning their hands. And then we've done a repeat video with the educators doing the correct best practice techniques. And it's something as simple as list 3 things that you found in the video that the educator did incorrectly and why. So it's a really simple ways. You don't have to have all the fantastic whiz-bang equipment to produce a really interactive scenario for your students. You can develop lots of different scenarios within a unit. You can even have there's a program called Panopto, which we use. It's like a presentation program, and you can have a video and you can stop the video and then put multiple choice questions in there, or you can do a poll or things like that. Something simple as Kahoot. I don't know if you have it over there. It's a big sort of multiple choice thing that you can do online, which is very interactive, and they work out who the winner is based on who gets the most questions right. There certainly is some really fantastic programs out there that are quite cheap and easy to access, or you can just make your own. The hardest thing though we found is making sure that it is 100% accurate and reflecting clinical practice. Sometimes when we've done a skill 1,001 times, we might just forget at that one time not to wash our hands, and the students are onto it. You didn't wash your hands. So it's that really making sure everything is done 100% right. And a simple way to do that is just have a massive big whiteboard in front of you, so with all the steps, so you don't forget them. So I'm more than happy to work with anyone or contact anyone and help develop some sort of program with you. So that you just need imagination and a few simple bits of equipment sometimes to make something come to reality and to be successful.
Thanks, Melissa. Maybe you could put just type into the chat if you know the names of some of those applications or programs that you use that you just mentioned then, just so people have them, and so I don't spell them incorrectly.
Yeah.
I think there was another question, Leha, is that right?
Vâng ạ, còn một câu hỏi nữa hơi nghiêng về phần thiết kế chương trình đào tạo trực tuyến online. Tôi vẫn xin đọc ở đây để trong trường hợp các diễn giả có thể có những cái câu trao đổi, và cũng đề anh Nguyễn Việt Kỳ có thể là sẽ xem lại cái phần recording của cái tuần trước có thông tin chi tiết hơn. Tôi xin đọc câu hỏi ạ. Cho em phương pháp đào tạo. Tôi xin đọc lại câu hỏi. Cho em hỏi phương pháp đào tạo mô hình phòng học ảo như thế nào? Dùng phần mềm gì để viết và thiết kế? Thời gian thiết kế bao lâu để hoàn tất một phòng học? Và cuối cùng là kinh phí như thế nào? Chuyên gia Việt Nam hướng phát triển sẽ ra sao ạ? Không biết là lúc nãy có một người cứ nói chen vào thì không biết là phiên dịch có nghe được hết không ạ? Có cần phải tôi đọc lại câu hỏi không ạ?
No, that's okay. I could probably shine some light on what we've done, and I had it in the presentation that keep it simple, the KISS method. So when we had the joinery, bricklaying teachers, painting teachers, they weren't doing connected delivery, and we didn't go into buying mass software to do all this fancy stuff. We just said, get the computer, turn it on, get the whiteboard in front of the webcam and start teaching. And then from that, you can build and progress to improve. Like for ours is probably a bit more advanced, where we're really embracing active learning, but that's with our building course that has gone over 7 years. For someone who's had to transition straight away, just slowly develop it and use, you know, the simple stuff first. I'm a big believer in using a lot of the Microsoft suite because it's all integrated. So anything you have, whether you've got a simple PowerPoint or even just a Word document, you can start converting it and putting it into Teams. And then obviously grow from that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Brett, about keeping it simple. Although some of those didn't look simple, you had to understand that that was part of a large grant. But when we do simulation, often everyone's very excited to have the patient all of a sudden having some epileptic seizure and then having someone else come in and someone else come in. And it just does create a lot of confusion for the students, especially when they're not used to a simulation occurring. And basically simulation is anything that replicates a real life environment. So Brett does simulation all the time. As nurses, we do simulation. Pretty much everyone that has spoken to you over the last couple of weeks do simulation as part of their component. It just might be called something different, like a role play or something like that. But definitely keeping it simple is the best process, and then layering the complexity as you go along, as the students understand what they're doing. And like I said, there is very expensive programs and expensive ways, and the technology is amazing these days. But there's other very simplistic ways to explain to students what you need to do it, and to do it in a slightly different, more sort of innovative way, such as a simple platform, virtual reality platform as Scenario VR there. The cost, it can vary. If you're hiring actors, the cost will be elevated. But if you're using, we found if you're using educators that the students know to do the acting, it sort of decreases the immersiveness in it, and decreases the students are like, oh, I know that person, that they're just acting. But if you see someone that you don't know, it increases its realism, I guess, as well.
Okay, thank you. Leha, are there any more questions?
Hiện thì chúng ta đã hết các câu hỏi trong hộp chat chị Linda ạ, và tôi cũng không nhìn thấy còn cánh tay nào giơ lên để đặt câu hỏi nữa.
Okay, no, that's fine. If there are no more questions, we can wrap up today's session. I'd like to thank Brett and Melissa very much for their time today and for their presentations. It's very much appreciated. I'd like to thank all of the TVET officers and all of the leaders and trainers from Vietnamese colleges who attended today. We thank you for your time, and we hope that you found today's session useful. So thank you again, everyone, and we'll see you again next week.